Welcome to the HR Uprising Podcast. This podcast series explores HR hot topics and challenges through conversations with relevant experts and real-life HR, learning, and OD professionals. The HR Uprising is about learning through collaboration and evidence-based action. We want colleagues to have the confidence and skills to rise up through their organizations by delivering real, lasting business value. Now, introducing your host, chartered psychologist, experienced change agent, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach, Lucinda Carney.
Hi, my name's Sian Duddy. If you were expecting Lucinda, I'm sorry about that, but actually we've decided to turn the tables on Lucinda this time, so I'm going to interview her. For me, I manage the social media and work on the branding for HR Uprising with Lucinda.
And as well as a few social activities now and then,
knowing each other a while. Activities now and again, a few wines. We launched the HR Uprising 6 months ago, and it's very exciting to see how that's growing across all of our social media, LinkedIn group, Instagram, Twitter, and the podcast actually is projected to achieve 10,000 downloads by Christmas.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's very, very exciting.
I've seen it's in the business charts again this morning, which is quite amazing when you think how many new podcasts are being released all the way as well.
It's brilliant. It's really good, and all the feedback has been very positive actually. When I was chatting to some of the guests, Lucinda, and our PR and sort of social media network, they were sort of asking a bit more about you. And when I got together with our marketing team, we thought, well, actually, we should be turning the tables on you and we should be asking about you. So...
starting to squirm now.
Don't panic. I will be gentle.
edit it all out, yeah.
We can edit out the dodgy bits.
I suppose it's worth saying, because for the listeners who maybe didn't listen last week, over December, we're doing our 12 HRs of Christmas, I'm calling it. We're not allowed to put Santa hats on you, you'll be relieved to know. But we wanted to talk to real HR people. As you know, always know from the HR Uprising, I wanted to hear from a real wide range of people who are doing HR. And so we've got 12-minute interviews coming over December, some of which have been pre-recorded. And this is where the team said, but Lucinda, you should do one of these, and actually you need to lead the way. So hence this episode is going to be my story.
Absolutely right. It's going to be slightly more than 12 minutes because you can't stop talking.
Even when I speak really quickly. So apologies.
So it'll be slightly more than 12 minutes, but absolutely right. So where did it all begin, Lucinda? I don't think I knew you then, actually.
No. So in terms of getting into HR or learning development, I've always said that I'm very lucky because I've always been in the easy bit of HR, because learning and development, people want to talk to you. In HR, sometimes people don't. They have to do the really hard stuff.
Good point.
So I actually started out in pharmaceutical. I started out in a sales job. My first day, it was a 6-week training course, and I sat on the training course and looked at the trainer and thought, oh man, training, that's so much fun. That's what I want to do. And I genuinely think training is a bit of a vocation. Yeah. So in a couple of years, I went into sales training, went up through the business from sales training, then went into animal health and headed up the training over there, whereas more of an OD angle to it. Obviously, I did a psychology degree and I did my master's in psychology, obviously. The link as to why I like to do the OD stuff. So I've also got an OD qualification because I did my master's, and I did chartered occupational psychology. I did my chartership through my career at Pfizer and then at Siemens. So I did it on the job in terms of writing up my logbook. You have to write up 400 days worth of content. So it was interesting to me. I was always more interested in, rather than the product training, into more of the people stuff. I think because, as you know, we've when I start analysing you on your Myers-Briggs profile at a party or something like that, I've always been really interested in what makes people tick and what motivates people, and just people interest me hugely. After 7 or 8 years at Pfizer, I then moved to Siemens Telecoms business, and spent 10 years there, give or take, a couple of kids, and setting up my own business for a while. And the reason I set up my own business, when I went into Siemens, they were just setting up they just got sort of technical training. They didn't really have any people development, and it was my job to set it up. But what was interesting is I had to make it, there was an internal marketplace that I had to establish. So I had to write the courses, do the training, price it, and actually almost carry a budget. Yeah. And so that's where the interesting link in terms of commerciality comes in. And I'd been in sales before, I suppose. And that, of course, is one of the things that I don't know whether HR are particularly confident at. It's certainly one of the things that we're often criticised about, being commercial. And that commercial acumen stayed with me through my role at Siemens. I ended up, when I left in 2009, in charge of 50 people. I had a team of technical training, e-learning, behavioural training. And through that journey, I'd always been involved in just forming the whole OD strategy. It was quite an exciting time to be there because we'd been stripped out from the main parent company. So we were standalone. Had an MD who was quite open, if you can make a good business case, to supporting the initiatives we were doing, putting things like performance management, competency frameworks, talent management, a whole range of OD activities and organisational change I was able to lead and get that experience.
So you had the sponsorship in the organisation. That's
Massively
not always
important.
the case, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you get sponsorship, and I'll talk about separately about change. There's probably a whole episode on change, but it did make a huge difference. It wasn't always easy. You had to. I look back, it was quite tough because I was one of 2 senior females in an organisation of 2,000 people, and I was before I was 30 at that point, and so you had to be quite credible and taken seriously.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the boss I had at the time was very good at stepping back and getting out of the way. And he just let us get on with it. And the MD, as long as you could make a good commercial argument for something, he would give you a shot. But you had to have thought things through. You had to know the detail and the big picture. And you had to be able to influence people to stand up and be counted and challenge people. So all of those skills. So I've plugged my book that I've just finished writing and editing at the moment, is about how to be a change superhero. We're coming out in May. Yeah, it's basically that's what it is. A lot of it's common sense, but actually... there's a whole level of skills in terms of feeling confident and trying to push yourself. And on top of that, I didn't always feel confident. A lot of the time I felt I shouldn't be there. I remember someone saying to me, Lucinda, let's ask the training expert. And I was like, oh,
yikes.
Expert? That's a bit of a pressure. So, yes, I think a lot of us struggle with sort of imposter syndrome. And that was one of the things that I had to challenge myself to overcome.
Did you were under 30 as a female working in this organisation, and you had to take a strong lead and be influential. Was that one of the major challenges, do you think?
I never really thought about the fact that I was female being one of them. It actually almost struck me surprising when the MD pointed it out to me. So obviously it was. So that was a challenge, I think. And to such an extent, it was a culture. It's quite a male culture in the 90s, wasn't 90s, 2000s. But everyone wore suits. You had to kind of get. So I kind of wore the uniform and conformed in that way. What I was thinking, it was just more about balancing family life and work life and getting on with people. What was a luxury that I had then that I don't have now was, of course, the backing of a huge corporate. There's so much resource. If you can make a business case, the money's there. Now I run a small business and have done for the last 10 years. You've got to manage your working capital. You've got to have the right people. You've got to do more with less. So I think about those independent HR professionals who are in a small business. It's a world of difference when you haven't got the Bank of Siemens behind you, and you've got to be creative, commercial, motivate people in different ways.
Well, that is true. But when you're in a large organisation, trying to make an impact and change is harder, surely. There has to be there's a lot of influence that's needed there. You have to understand very quickly what the needs are of all those individuals. So it is actually very difficult. Although, as you say, you've got the budget and maybe the manpower behind it to deliver.
You have got to have the passion, I think, and be prepared to stand up and be counted and challenge the status quo, fundamentally in there, and go for it, and maybe not see it as challenges. It's only when I look back on things like that I considered that they might have been a challenge.
So, corporate life was something that suited you, do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually until a new manager took over. I didn't realise, I realised that freedom's really important to me. Yeah. And I only realised that.
In what way do you mean freedom then?
The freedom to make a difference and to go and feel empowered to drive things through.
Yeah.
I realised that the boss I'd had been a kind of stand back. Stand back. Some people might say
not micromanaging.
No, he definitely didn't micromanage. Let's just put it that way. He was good at recruiting people who got things done.
Got it. To make him look good. Well,
basically,
excellent.
Yes, and it worked. And so myself, in fact, and this lady, Jen Sherler, who is one of our 12 in 12, we delivered a load of programmes like we put in performance management. We just put so much stuff in. But we were given a free rein, as I say, if we could make the business case for it. I then got taken over, a new manager came in, and he just didn't get it. Didn't get the people stuff. I felt undermined. I felt micromanaged. And I realised I couldn't stay in that environment. So I kind of also had done it. If you see, I'd been there 10 years. I felt that outgrown the organisation to a large extent.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to grow further. So there wasn't like a big strategic European role because it had been pulled out of the parent company. I looked at whether or not I might leave and go into London. I also got a real passion for the NHS, which is a bit of a random story I won't go into massively, but I have a real passion for the NHS, and one day I would like to get involved in supporting it further. We now have customers in the NHS, which is always really important to me.
Yeah.
And so I did look at OD roles in the NHS, and I also looked at going into London because where we're based, that was doable. But actually I thought, I think I want to build something. And I had 2 young kids. Well, as you know, we have kids similar age. And I thought I want to have the freedom to build something, but also the freedom to work when I want to work. Now, don't get me wrong. As you know, I'm the primary breadwinner. It wasn't an option not to make money or to stop work.
No.
So some people thought it was incredibly risky setting up on your own, but I didn't really see it that way. I thought, in a job, you're only ever 3 months away from being made redundant. So I decided I could set up on my own.
In some ways, it surely gives you even more drive. I mean, if you're wholly responsible, really, then you've got to make it work, haven't you?
And I left with some money and some customers and some contacts. So that set me up, and I started out just delivering training while I worked out what it was that I was going to grow. But I always knew I wanted something which was a recurring revenue. I think having built a business internally, I wanted to build a business for myself externally.
Yeah.
To try and make a broader difference. And as I say, I was very keen to work with the NHS.
Yeah, okay. So how did that fit then in with your personal life? And you see, we've got kids the same age. They were quite young. So your partner was able to take the slack on that.
Yeah.
And you were able to, so that's sort of, you had the balance there.
Yes.
But there was quite a lot else going on in your personal life at that time, wasn't it? We knew each other. That's when we really sort of got to know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It all happened at once, didn't it? Moved house. Well, so in 2009, when I set up on my own, so my background, the reason I have a passion for the NHS is because my family both worked in it. My dad was a doctor, my mum was in there, my sister works there. And my mum has dementia, or had dementia, and had dementia since she was 57. So she'd had it for a long time. So my dad had been a full-time carer. My dad then died suddenly of a stroke. In the April of that year, my sister... It wasn't suitable for my sister to look after my mum, so we brought my mum down, thankfully not to live with us, although I did think about that, and I think that would have been a straw that broke the camel's back. Put her in a great nursing home around here. So I had to deal with all of that, managing the estate, and obviously grief through that period of time. And I suppose work in many ways allows you to just get your head into it and distract you.
It does,
drive through.
which can be dangerous, but it is an important distraction sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, essentially, you had to keep going, didn't you? It was the only
alternative.
way.
Yes, there's something when you're losing your parents where you suddenly feel really insecure, almost like there's no grown-ups to look after you anymore. I find that really scary.
There's no form of reference. And you still seek your approval of your parents, however old you are, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. So that was in 2009. Obviously, since then, my mum then died in 2016, and built the business through. The early days were also really hard because I was trying to balance. So then when I decided I was going to build software, because I knew about software, rubbish. I don't know anything about software, but it's all right. There are people that work for us that do. Yes, a lot of my friends can't think it's very funny that we have a software business.
Well, it is quite bizarre that you've gone from sort of being a trainer to running a software business.
Yes, and the reason that it makes sense is because it's trying to address some of the pains that I'd experienced as an in-house HR professional. So, when I was internal, as I said, 20 odd years ago, we developed an internal performance management system because at the time there wasn't anything. We were using paper. We were also talking about a continuous performance management culture. When I was in Siemens, we embedded that. We talked about monthly one-to-ones. We drove a whole culture change around that. We introduced pay for performance. All of those things. I know that that's not necessarily trendy now, but continuous performance management, people are talking about as if it's something new. It really isn't.
No.
And so when I developed the sort of prototype for Actus, I knew what it needed to do, and I knew the pains that I wanted it to address, because I'd had those pains. So actually, it makes sense for me to be running an HR software business because I've felt the pain. I know what I wanted to do.
So you delivered the software that you would want to use effectively, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So in that time then, years ago, was that typical for those companies then? Everyone was basically building their own system?
I think so, yeah. And lots of Excel, lots of SharePoint.
Yeah.
Yes. And I looked originally whether we could go and white label something, and you only had like SuccessFactors in the States, and this is before it was bought by SAP. So there was nothing really to do. So I thought, how hard can it be to build software? And I think you remember I used to do some really crazy mornings where I'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning because we had Indian developers.
I do remember.
Talking to them for 3 hours about the prototype or what, the building of it, and then going off and delivering a day's training. So it is a good job I was younger.
It frankly impacted on our partying, Lucinda.
Yes.
I do remember that very well. So in terms of the software business then, so you've developed this software that you would want to use in a company. And then outside of that and above that, because you've got the skills of a trainer and as a coach, then you can also see the bigger picture. So you can see, right, here's the piece of software, but outside of that, it's not just a standalone thing. You've got to build a whole program around it, and that probably will require change and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of people stuff around that, isn't there?
Yeah, completely. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? Because it's actually quite a natural story if you think about it. We just talked about all I've done was I was always involved in change.
Yeah.
And if you put in a piece of software, it really doesn't matter whether it's our software. Obviously, I'd love you to put our software in, but actually software is 10 or 20% of the solution.
Yes.
The behavioural change is 80% of the solution. So we've always wanted to try and help people actually achieve that outcome as opposed to say, here's some software, off you go. So we have aligned training courses. A lot of it's about management skills. We've got resources, and actually the natural growth point was the HR Uprising, although I had to get the business to a certain point before we could do this, where we can share and disseminate that knowledge on a broader scale, so more people can get more of the 80% going, whatever systems they're using in their businesses.
It feels a bit like that's the difference with Actus, really. I mean, HR is not my world. It's not the world that I know, but certainly IT in that environment.
But you've worked in environments where you've had the cultural requirements.
Of course, and very much. And, with IBM, it was very much, being an American company, they were very forward thinking, and it was very much based around that kind of sort of performance management. And, I was very used to that kind of behaviour in that organisation. Yeah. And also fascinated with people, of course. So this, it is really interesting working in this kind of environment. So it feels like Actus is different there, because I feel like there's another step up from it's not just the software piece, it is that people piece as well of the puzzle, which is really fascinating to me. So we talked about HR Uprising. When we started chatting about HR Uprising, of course I was highly excited because I love the idea of new brand.
It was over coffee and cake for once,
it was over
rather than wine.
Over coffee rather than wine, which is quite miraculous. But I love the idea of a new brand, and also I love the idea of brand Lucinda, really, and the idea that...
Which makes me cringe, doesn't it, when you say things like that?
It makes you absolutely cringe. I know you can't bear it, but I think it's very valid to create this, to create something sort of above what you have already, that delivers something to a community where there is a need. And actually that's been proven, hasn't it? If you think about the podcasts that we've built and everything we've built over the last 6 months, the feedback is very much from that. And from so many different HR professionals. I have loved speaking to all of the different people that I've been in contact with. So diverse.
You forget how much you've actually learnt and that you've taken on over like 20 odd years of stuff, because sometimes I think it's really easy just to take it for granted and go, who am I to share anything? But there's loads of people coming in, and there's lots of, again, we all share the same pains, but like the customers that we work with, I realise that they have their private sector, public sector, it doesn't matter, they've all got similar challenges. So actually helping people to collaborate, and I think where this comes from is it's value. So going back to the fact I'm a trainer, I did an episode this last week which is about 7 habits that I used to train on, which I think is an amazing set of principles and stuff. And I was lucky enough, therefore, to always be aware of what my values are. And my top value is making a difference, which is an interesting one. I've got other ones around freedom, achievement, various things like that, security. But making a difference, for me, it's often about collaborating and sharing with other people. So the HR Uprising felt like something that we could take it up a notch. So yes, I'm hoping a lot of this stuff will benefit the people we already work with, but it broadens out the remit. And it's also, I'm quite passionate about making things a bit bigger than yourself. And I get irritated when you see, HR are criticised for not being strategic enough, or for not being this, or for not being that. You don't really hear about FDs being criticised for being boffins. You don't really hear that kind of thing, which is, sorry, that was very stereotypical, but it's why is there so much criticism levelled at HR professionals? I'm not really quite sure why. And I felt it was time to have this uprising, this concept, although, as you know, we did come through a number of revolution.
That's branding, darling.
Quite a lot of brands. But the idea of the uprising was that actually we can all rise up together and support each other and collaborate and share information.
But I think also it's really important to me, the authenticity of the brand and you, because I know you so well and I know what you like. And I think for you, Lucinda, as well, you're incredibly knowledgeable and, high achiever, but you're also humble enough to realise that there are things that you can learn as well. And I remember us starting the podcast and you being actually quite terrified of being out there and putting yourself out there.
I'm coming out in a cold sweat thinking about it.
You are. I know. I remember the first one. But I think that there is a need, there is a need there. You're right. There's a community there. And we've seen that, haven't we, with our network?
Yeah, and the ones I really like doing are the ones we're going, okay, it's a common sense approach. I'm not saying that I'm going to be rocket science. But there's a balance between, I can look up the research, I've got some experience, and I can also translate it, I suppose I'm a trainer, into, how can we use it?
Yeah.
Because I can't bear stuff which is all theoretical and go, oh, it's great, let's go and philosophise. But actually, what am I actually going to do tomorrow? So it's massively gratifying. We get quite a few people who are doing their e-PDR courses who go, this is really helpful. You've made me put this into practice. So that I think is
and for me, what I love is that HR Uprising feels like it's for everyone along that journey in their HR career and outside of HR.
Yeah, and when we launched it, there were quite a few people who are non-HR people who go, actually, there's a number of the episodes do have some broader relevance as well for anyone in management.
100%. What's next then?
Yeah, so...
Little nap?
Yeah. Well, we've got to get our 12 HRs coming out for Christmas, absolutely. So I'm working on a book, as you know, and I've finished the book. It's in its editing stage, so that should be out. It'll be out by Practical Inspiration Publishing. And I mentioned it earlier, How to Be a Change Superhero. And there'll be a whole load of resources with that, which will be helpful to all sorts of people in support of how you can drive change in your organisation. So that'll be out May, I think, in 2020. So that's been a project for a bit. And then we're now, as you know, we've been talking to people about what they want to see more of. I want to carry on building good quality episodes for the HR Uprising. So please, anyone listening to this, if you say, can you do an episode on this? Tell us. If I can find out about it and do it, then I'll do it. Otherwise, we'll get an expert to do it. So I want to keep on doing this up to at least 50 episodes.
I think this is the key thing for you, isn't it? I know that you don't want to do podcasts for the sake of doing podcasts because it just needs to be another element.
We can carry on doing quality.
I agree with you. And I think you've always wanted to deliver something that will be of value to people.
So I don't want to be making up subjects for the sake of it, but if there's something you can do, so I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other areas that we're exploring that we'll perhaps launch early 2020, if people are interested, again, do contact us, is alongside the change agent thing, I'm going to run some training courses for HR, so how to be a change agent.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing some taster courses early 2020. And also looking at maybe masterminding. And this is something, if you've not heard of masterminding, it's really common in the business community where you get 6 or 12 people who'd work together over a 6 or 12 month time period, maybe meeting once a month or collaborating online once a month, and they'd share their challenges, there'd be a coach or a facilitator, and you sort of grow together. Now, it's common in the business community. I'm not aware of many of these in the HR community. So I thought we might reach out and trial one of those and tested the idea out with a few people.
We were talking about this the other day, weren't we? It fascinates me. I think that is a logical thing to do, actually, isn't it?
Because looking back at the internal people, you look at the people who are out from an HR point of view networking, many of them are independent. So they might have been internal, but many of them are independent. So where are all these internal HR people? And how could we bring more value into our corporate organisations if we bring that information in? So that's something that I'm interested in exploring.
I love the sound of that. What about sort of at the other end of the scale? We talked about maybe some mentoring as well. So people who are at the earlier stage of their HR, because quite a lot of those people are listening to those podcasts now, and there's a lot of knowledge to be gleaned there. I think we've talked about a mentoring program as well for some of those. Yeah,
well, I've benefited this year from mentoring. I thought you'd go through a while. Obviously, I'm a coach, and you sometimes when you've got the skills, qualified coach, but actually it doesn't mean you can coach yourself. So I'd gone for a certain period of time, I think a bit anaerobically, and over the last 12 months, that's one of the other reasons I brought the podcast through. I had some mentoring from somebody, Nick Bradley, who's the voiceover on here actually.
Yeah.
And he'd said, actually, you've got loads that you could contribute and you want to contribute and you've got the knowledge, so why not do the podcast? So mentoring, there are so many knowledgeable HR people out there, and we could set up mentoring programs and again, get that collaborating more formalised. So I have got some ideas with some of the social media areas out there, and again, shout out to the HR ninjas who are doing a great job in
that's a great Facebook group actually, isn't it? They're brilliant, really well subscribed.
It's very it's really well subscribed, and I used to think the CIPD LinkedIn group was great, and it was great. Something LinkedIn did have made it disappear to me. I don't see it very much now.
Right.
But the HR Ninjas has got a real life to it. And so for anyone listening isn't aware of HR Ninjas on Facebook, I definitely encourage you to sign up.
It's pretty dynamic, isn't it, actually?
Really, really helpful.
We've talked, there's been a couple of podcasts recently where we've talked about wellness, about well-being, about, making sure that you're keeping emotionally sort of sane and you're looking after yourself. And in fact, the last podcast that you did on your own was around that and well-being, and you talked a bit about how you have that balance. How do you manage that? It's pretty hectic, your life, isn't it, with everything going on? How do you make sure that you are looking after yourself?
Well, lots of the time, the reality is I'm probably not, as we talked about it. But that was like a wake-up call to me. I thought I really need to walk the talk. Again, you can know this stuff. That's why last week's episode covered Covey. I've known this stuff for 20 years. Doesn't mean I always do it. So it's good to take stock. So I'm really trying, as you can see this morning when we're having this podcast, I'm rather bedraggled because I dragged myself out in the rain to walk the dogs before.
I'm impressed.
Otherwise, it would not have happened. So I'm trying very hard to prioritise things in my life that is not just work. So it is really about time management, a lot of it. It's about delegating things and being really focused and goal setting as to what's important week to week. I have to also remember that the reason I'm doing all of this is actually my most important thing at the moment, at this stage in my life, is my family and my kids.
Yeah.
And that's why I set up on my own originally, to be able to be there for my kids, not just physically, try and be there mentally. So I do try and prioritise time there as well.
Well, that's interesting, because this is the irony. You can end up getting so caught up in something like this that you've created to enable you to have more time with your family, that you've got less time with them.
I try not to work at weekends so much now. I rarely do it. Well, often they're not up, since they're both teenagers now, so you can get quite a few hours done first thing. But certainly just remembering what my priorities are, and I try to do that. And, I've talked a few times about netball. I posted about that. And I discovered netball 5 or 6 years ago. I'm in my 40s, and did a back to netball. We now play in the local league. We're not breaking any records, break a few bones and ligaments occasionally. But I'm part of a tribe of people, and it gets me out. It's a team sport. I also umpire, and it means that it's active relaxation. So it means that I can't think about work while I'm umpiring or if I'm playing netball, plus I'm getting exercise, plus I'm feeling part of a team. So I really encourage anyone, that's definitely been something.
There's something
worthwhile.
About, I can't imagine you being someone who could meditate. I'm the same. I wish I could.
Do that?
I don't know. I wish I could.
I really want.
I wish I could
my
switch
goal
off and be able
2020
to do
is to
that.
learn how to do that.
This is going to be it then, Lucinda. This is going to be our challenge. But so for me, it's moving meditation or some sort of dynamic meditation. So it's dancing for me and ballet. And that's really important. But I think there's something about competitive sport, ideally, that really sort of takes you out of that existence, and it keeps you away from thinking about all of the churning things to do that you've got to, and takes you away from it.
You've just got to be in the moment, haven't you? I suppose if you're doing something like that. So that is definitely something that's been a real therapy. Plus you get a kind of fulfillment of the other people that you're friends with.
Yeah, well, it's team again, isn't it? Which is you all over. So I'm afraid I've got to do this to you. We set up the 12 in 12, which I absolutely love, by the way. I think I'm really excited about that. And we'll launch that in December. We built up a structure for 12 in 12, and we wanted to sort of have an idea of what you would say to your younger self. So for you, Lucinda, what would you, if you went back now to that girl who was under 30, having to be quite high level and influential, what would you be saying to her now?
I think it's got to be believing yourself. It's really interesting. I don't do regrets. I think I'm too busy kind of thinking forwards, or I don't analyse things too much. So actually I've realised I apologise for all these people I've asked this question to, because I find it quite hard to answer. But I think I would go, just believe in yourself. Don't overthink things. I would say maybe think bigger in terms of where you can go, etc. But make sure that it's on purpose. So know what's important to you. So don't just climb the ladder because that's what you feel you should do. Make sure you do know what your priorities are. So do something like a 7 habits or something, so you understand that the ladder you're climbing is where you actually want to go. You're not going to turn around when you've 40 and regret it.
And do you keep referring back to that?
I do. And I always I knew my values. I knew making a difference. The thing when you're training people, you can leave a training session and go, I feel like I'm making a difference. And actually, frankly, that's one of the things that running a software business occasionally, because when you're running a small business, you have to do so many things you're not good at. That it's easy to lose yourself. So doing the HR Uprising has felt much more like I'm on purpose, because I feel like I'm adding value to people personally.
Well, and also you say you've surprised yourself with how much you do know, actually. You're sort of revisiting quite a lot of stuff.
Definitely. I would also say, be present. Learn how to meditate. That's what I say to my young self. Learn how to meditate.
This is going to be one of our goals. It'll be our goal.
Something like that. But just if you be yourself, ignore. Be yourself. Be nice. Be collaborative.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, these are things I think I generally do, and I think I would want to continue doing. Be collaborative. I would, as an internal HR person, have reached out and looked a bit outside of my bubble of the 2 large organisations. I think that would have been interesting as well.
Isn't it funny? There's an irony, isn't it, between ambition but also being aware of everybody around you. And I think when we're younger as well, there's less of that. And as you get older, I suppose you've got more wisdom.
Of course, there was less social media thinking about it. Of course, it wouldn't have been that easy to do. But
that's true, actually.
Yeah, but I still think that would have been.
We didn't really talk about networking
when
we were younger. We were too busy at the pub. We were sort of networking.
Got to stop talking about alcohol.
So what about your HR superpower? Now this has fascinated me with the things that people have come back with. That's quite a tricky thing to think about, but I think it's been quite entertaining. What would be yours?
We've had lots of different answers, haven't we, from people about cloning themselves, really understand what's going on. I mentioned it earlier, and I would banish imposter syndrome. I would I think so many people almost think themselves down, and it is quite often a female trait in terms of that. And I nothing against fabulous HR audience guys, a lot of great blokes out there too, but I do, we know that things like interviews, women will look at a list of things and see the things they can't do. I really would like women to believe in themselves, or just banish imposter syndrome, go, I can do this. Okay, I may not know all the answers, but I can go out to my network and get some of the answers. So I would really like almost just people to feel like a superhero, that they can do what they believe in, and not undermine ourselves from whatever it is that makes us do it.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one, isn't it? For us, we've talked about that so many times. Okay, so we're in the social media world now, Lucinda, which is quite a thing for you, isn't it? Instagram and Twitter and
I know
these
lots
things.
about Instagram, don't I, Sean? Should we just fess up here that if you talk to me on Instagram, it's probably Sean, because I'm not quite... I've got LinkedIn, I've got Twitter, I've got Facebook, but Instagram's still a bit of a mystery to me.
Do you know, what I'd say though is, we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? Twitter is so dynamic, isn't it? And I think you try and be on there as much as possible, and that makes brilliant connections, and you can have immediate conversations with people, can't you? Yeah. LinkedIn, you also do share quite a lot of stuff, and of course we've got our LinkedIn group as well, so we've got a lovely growing following on there. What's the best way for people to contact you though, do you
I'd say probably to contact me, LinkedIn is, contact me directly. Obviously, the details are there. You can email me, although emailing or call or whatever. But LinkedIn, I think, is a great way to be connected in terms of understanding my network, and content's there more longer term, and I'll sort of put longer stuff out there and have conversations there. Twitter is more of an interaction place. So either LinkedIn or Twitter, I think, because I think Twitter is very authentic. I've learned that. I think when we started out, it was like, Twitter, do you just put stuff out there? So it's me on Twitter. Actus is more of the team. So, talk to me on Twitter or LinkedIn.
What I see with Twitter, there is, there's the real authenticity there. I think it's the absolute conversation at that time, isn't it? Yeah. And I really like it. That is a good way actually to contact you. But
talk to my kids through Instagram, maybe. I just try to shame them through Instagram. They've been unfollowed, I think, by my children.
Your son is really impressed with Instagram, so I'm quite pleased with myself. So that's
it's
fine.
Pretty. Yeah, well done.
Okay, so I think that you're free to go.
Oh, marvellous.
I think you're free to go. I think that we're
done and dusted.
I think,
Well, thank you. That wasn't too painful, Sian.
I hope I was gentle on you. I really enjoyed chatting to you.
Anyone who wants to link in with Sian as well. So Sian manages lots of our future productions, our future topics, and also where we're going with the brand. So your details are on the show notes, Sian, as well, aren't they?
Yes.
And do follow us on all our social media and get in touch. So thanks to everybody who's been listening. Just to introduce next week and what's going on, just to talk you through what's going on, I guess. So as we mentioned, over the next 4 weeks, over the Christmas period, we're going into our 12 in 12. So there's 12 HR professionals with really diverse backgrounds, and we'll be asking them a series of questions, really simple ones, just a bit about their background, challenges they've overcome, advice to their former self, magic, if they had a magic wand or a superpower, what would it be? So we talk to 3 different people on each episode. Nice, easy listening, great people to link in with, but really regular, normal people, which was important. Then the first episode of January is going to be our best bits episode. So we've been taking some surveys about what the best bits were of the various episodes that we've had over the last 6 months. So we'll do a compilation show in the new year because that seems fitting. And then after that, what we'll be rolling back into is obviously an alternation, if possible, of sort of specific deep dives into certain topics alongside some new conversation with series. And the conversation with series, we're going to expand next year to also look at business, the broader business piece. So we're going to do things like talking with CEOs about what value they get from HR. So essentially, what do I want from HR? Talking to business leaders, because again, this whole sort of story that's out there, that maybe it's even a myth, HR aren't doing what the business wants. I thought it'd be great for us to hear from business people as to what value HR can bring. So I think that will be quite interesting. So we'll be running some good interviews next year on that as well, some good conversations. So finally, all that I would like to say is enjoy December. Look after your well-being. Thank you for listening, and please do share the word in terms of the HR Uprising. If you're enjoying what we're doing, it'd be great to share it with your colleagues and friends, and do suggest what else you'd like to hear us cover. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast. You can access more information, including resources or links mentioned in the show, at our website, www.hruprising.com. Also, you might want to join our LinkedIn community or tweet to us at HR Uprising. We'd love to hear from you.